to hire lawyers from England or Europe or America to represent India's case before the WTO Dispute Resolution Forum. It is the recognition of this lack of understanding and scholarship that has led to the introduction of economics as a compulsory subject in the legal curriculum from 1980s. Today, as many as 5 different subjects are being taught, 2 as compulsory in the law curriculum and 3 as optional. We teach a course on microeconomics and macroeconomics, the usual, and we teach a course on law and rural development, another course on law and urban development, and finally a research-based course on law and economics, where you can choose any sector, energy, telecom, this, that, and the other. So therefore, there are now law graduates who are sufficiently knowledgeable to use economic analysis in organizing their arguments, their documentation, to be able to participate meaningfully in a technology transfer deal, or in a foreign investment deal, or in a merger and acquisition matter. So much of economics, so much of accountancy, so much of management. If you were to intelligently negotiate it, you can, of course, to some extent through partnership with other professionals. But if you yourself are not strong in it, you are not likely to be able to protect the interests of your client, your country. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, what I want to submit is what we are beginning today is a late acknowledgement of this symbiotic relationship. And we have to very quickly plan as to how this relationship can be established. Because IGIDR is a research institution largely manned by economists. You do not have a law program as such. You borrow from law people from outside to be able to interact. Can that sustain the type of programs Ms. Mahendra Dev has said that you have to do? For a training program, it's okay. But for a teaching program, you need to have a division with law people who are sufficiently knowledgeable about economics, in which case the institutional base can perhaps scatter. Otherwise, we may have problems. At least in the second stage of the development, you need to. Particularly, I see today, the other day, the Chief Justice of India was making an appeal to the Prime Minister in the Commonwealth Law Conference in Hyderabad. He was making out a case that there is the entire economic sector is now being organized under various regulatory bodies. The Telecom Regulatory Authority, the Insurance Regulatory Authority, the Electricity Regulatory Authority. You have 13, 14 such regulatory authorities. There are vertical as well as horizontal. You know, the Competition Commission of India or the Securities and Exchange Board. You find that they are developing a new jurisprudence, which is not based on precedent that was set in the court system, but are based on appropriate economic market-oriented principles that works to the benefit of both the society, the consumer, and the producer. Now, who is tracking this new jurisprudence and its development? Which academic institution is providing the jurisprudence that are necessary for appropriate disposal of the type of challenges that these economic sectors are posing, particularly when foreign investors are involved? I submit that today there is a paucity. With the result, the Competition Commission is not able to take off. And you will find that the similar challenges are there. So the Chief Justice was saying, please start an Indian regulatory service, so that like IAS or IPS, let there be persons equally qualified in law, economics, management, accountancy, who would be able to man these regulatory authorities so that the disputes that go to the Supreme Court are reduced, because in the Supreme Court there is no expertise to be able to organize or hear the appeals, etc. And they have to be quickly disposed. You have to have at least settlement outside court. As it happens in many cases, these are settled outside court. So if you want the regulatory system to be developed, again, you have to provide the knowledge base very quickly to be able to cater to the... And lastly, I will submit an interesting episode that happened involving me also, and the minister was responsible initially in the Salem Advocates Association case, where there was a committee in which Honorable Minister was also a member. Justice, don't recollect the judge who was involved was Justice Jagannath Rao, probably, and he recommended to the Supreme Court that there should be a judicial impact assessment of legislations that are proposed in Parliament and state assemblies. Because every legislation generates a certain amount of litigation in court. And litigation thrown up by legislations, new legislations, demand more judicial time. So therefore, there is a cost involved. And that cost is not taken into account when the legislation or the financial memorandum of the legislation is adopted. So this committee in which Honorable Minister was involved recommended to the court that the court must direct the government to take account of the costs that are to be incurred by the judiciary by additional litigation or workload and introduce it in the financial memorandum. So the government, having got this order from the Supreme Court, did not know how to go about calculating this. And they constituted a committee with Jagannath Rao himself, Justice Jagannath Rao. I was also involved, and we were to prepare it. So much of economics in that. How do you quantify the prospective litigation likely to be generated by a legislation that is now under consideration of Parliament? Whether it is Domestic Violence Act or it is FEMA or anything, etc. So we consulted a large number of economists, hired them to do some pilot studies and provide us a methodology whereby we could recommend to the government of calculating the impact of prospective legislations on judicial workload. This is the report that was produced out of it. It's a lot of equations, economic analysis and calculations that go into it, which I do not know whether the government departments will be able to assimilate and incorporate in calculating the thing. It needs to be perfected. The economists who have done, Krishna Kumar was one of the authors, he has himself acknowledged there is no uniform methodology which you can apply. And you may have to use experimental economics to be able to project a certain impact of new legislations in court. I say this because the minister knows well about it. One small amendment to the Negotiable Instruments Act made by Parliament, where the check bouncing cases were made criminal, generated as much as 25 lakh cases in a period of 3 years in the court system. Now the economics of the whole amendment, legislative amendment, and its impact is nobody's concern. With the result, the courts are having X number, 3 crore cases pending, and justice is denied to people, all sorts of, everything ultimately boils down to the economics of litigation and how it generates. What I submit therefore is there are current problems for which immediate solutions are needed. I wish those master's students who are enrolled in this program look at some of these issues which the developing economy like India confront in the matter of intelligent rule of law governance. Because ultimately, whatever economists might say, change can come only through rule of law in a democratic country like ours. And if we do not anticipate it, and if we allow, as we have been doing, that we come out with our legislation and then it is challenged, and then the whole thing is stalled, it's at heavy cost. So we should not allow it and reduce that sort of a negative impact, and we should therefore be able to advise the legislators and the policy developers as the appropriate tools to be used in order to ensure that legislation serves an economic purpose as well as a social purpose. I think there is tremendous scope for this law and economics to really grow in the academies of social science institutes as well as law schools, and whatever ways it can be done. Now it is the responsibility of Mahendra Dev and IGIDR. When I was the chairman of the Indian Statistical Institute a few years ago, we started a course on law and economics in the Indian Statistical Institute, but there were not many takers. In spite of the fact that the University of Juridical Sciences professors used to go and teach there in the MA program. I'm now told that JNU has also adopted teaching law and economics. More and more economics institutes will teach, but the agenda is immediate. If you want to contribute, there are so many areas which need to be looked at, which are of a priority item. This must engage, and I wish, therefore, Professor Babu, please prepare a prospective vision plan, a vision statement and an action plan, and find out who are the partners who can share it, particularly in research, and give it a momentum so that the lost time that we have is made up by the leadership that IGIDR might give in this area of scholarship. Thank you.
Sri Kapil Sibal, Professor Mahendra Dev, Professor Madhav Menon, Professor Babu, Professor Schafer, and friends. At the outset, I thank the director, Professor Mahendra Dev, and Professor Babu for giving me this opportunity to be here. It is like homecoming to me. Both Professor Madhav Menon, Sri Sibal, and Schafer given enlarged the research agenda of the program. Their addresses are very illuminating and very informative. All of them are emphasizing the intersection between law and economics. And Sri Sibal expanded it further. Intersection should be law, economics, and social forces. And went beyond. And then it should be applied to developmental areas. Many issues he identified, particularly in the area of energy he identified. He also identified higher education, whatnot. So it cannot remain, the program cannot remain as a program. It has to emerge as a stand-on unit within the ICIDR. Then only it can be able to address all the issues raised. I know that Schafer has been working in this area. I met him for the first time in 1980 at the University of Hyderabad. I was chairman of the Department of Economics. I could invite him. And he was that time a development economist and working on, and he gave a set of lectures on development, and also his work, he gave me a paper on, if I remember correct, on supply responses in Pakistan, agricultural supply responses in Pakistan. And again, he wrote me a letter that he would like to give a course on law and economics in Hyderabad. And I was amazed. And when I met him and listened to his lectures, he was a different man. He was no longer a development economist per se, but turned out to be law and economics. I then tried to know how he could become. See, he and a judge by name Ott and Professor Schafer, an economist, together started working on law and economics. And the law and economics emerged as a discipline, as a separate discipline in in the Europe. It is an intersection, it is not union. I have seen many books written on law and economics. It is a union. It is some chapters deal with economics, some chapters deal with law. There is no intersection at all. And whereas they have, I remember Schaeffer brought out a book on environmental law, and which is an intersection of both law, economics, and environment. And that found to be very useful. And many subsequently, I know in 90s and late 90s also and also early 20s, number of universities tried to start the program on law and economics. Delhi School, Schaeffer tried to do that, but he couldn't succeed. They started the program. I think he had some interaction with that time with Professor Kaushik Basu, and somehow it didn't pick up. Later on, Professor Ant started the program on law and economics. JNU also started, and IJDR. Now, among the three, in my view, in my judgment, law and economics program of IJDR is unique in several respects, in terms of its coverage, depth, and sweep also, and its outreach. And it has conducted a number of training programs and workshops. They have been rated high. Now, this program, particular program, makes an advance over other things. Before, I noted that the Professor Sri Sibbal is looking at his watch. Has already warned me, so I would like to make a few observations, not many, being an economist. I've seen the law and economics literature. That literature is dominated by what you call the rational behavior, and it is also market oriented. Rational choice theory. It is built on rational choice theory. It is good. It may be good for advanced countries. For developing countries, the perspective will be different. The issues raised by Sri Sibbal, I think the perspective has to expand. It has to be holistic. It has to be developed. Now, once you bring in wider perspective, then I think the intersection will be different. The intersection, then you have to consider law, economics, and social forces. Equity also has to be built into it. And most of the important what's done in law and economics I've seen is equity issue is not adequately given attention, whereas in Indian context, both social forces and equity issues are very important. And let me say to Sri Sibbal that there is a very good group in energy, environment, and economy here. The intersection is more with energy, environment, and industry. There were studies, and they also participated in the department. But the intersection has not been expanded to include law. Now this is an opportunity for them to bring law into it, and this would enlarge the framework. Once you bring in legal issues in economic analysis, the policy changes. Similarly, if you bring in economic issues in law, the whole law and legal framework may change. So then it is better to friends with both working in the area of environment, energy, should interact with lawyers, and we must have some few enlarge the faculty to include experts in law. Let me say one or two for your own how these studies are important. There is a study made by Professor Wadhwa, D.C. Wadhwa, on ordinances. Judge background and as well as the particular person filed the case. Case favored the other. So the social background also influences it. And I think the course should have moved out of the rational choice theory and incorporate the social forces also into the analysis. So I again thank both the director and Sri Babu for giving me this opportunity. Thank you.
Minister for Human Resource Development, Shri Kapil Sibal. We have been admiring your efforts in bringing cooperation and competition with emphasis on internationalization in Indian higher education programs. Today, we are grateful for your eminent presence here, your valuable time, and more importantly, your insightful inaugural address that flags off our partnership in the Erasmus Mundus Law and Economics program. On behalf of the IGIDR community and everyone on the dais, let me express our gratitude to you for being with us. Professor Madhav Menon, Founder Director Emeritus, National Law School, Bangalore, NUJS Kolkata, and National Judicial Academy Bhopal, and holder of Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan Chair Professorship of Rajya Sabha. You have been one of the great institution builders of this country and a true pioneer in modern legal education in India. You were with us in 2001, guiding our first baby steps, and we are most fortunate to have you here today, delivering the keynote address to the IGIDR's first class of MD students. You have been our mentor and well-wisher all these years, and we are greatly indebted to you for all your wise counsel. Professor Radhakrishna, former director of IGIDR and current chairman of the National Statistical Commission. This program took shape under your stewardship as